right, yeah, we can get started.
Yeah. So like Evan said, I'm Juliana. We're both juniors in the program, and we're so excited to explain what we've fallen in love with here at Clemson and where we found our home. So as biosystems engineers, we get asked a lot what we do. It's a relatively new term and new major. So the gist of it is that we apply classic engineering principles, design and analysis to biological systems. So whether that's a living organism, something small like a microbe, or something larger like a habitat or ecosystem, we work with all of that to achieve ecological balance. Our program here at Clemson is really unique because sustainability is at the forefront of everything we do. There's a sustainability minor you can pursue, but even without that, our biosystems program equips you to be a sustainable engineer, which is a unique quality entering the workforce, especially at this point in time. So like I said, biological principles come first, then the design and the ecological balance. And we like to say if we do our job well, you might not notice our work because it'll blend in so well.
Yes, and sustainability is honestly a really up and coming kind of field. We're at the point now where so much green technology and also the social consciousness, the desire to be green is all really coming together. And biosystems is really at the crux of that. So it's a pretty exciting time for us. So the reason we need biosystems engineers is because right now the world isn't exactly very clean or very sustainable. There's a lot of things that are rooted in us that we know we can do better and we can do greener. And that's why our emphasis is on sustainable and biologically sound design. So some of what we do is looking at developing alternatives to fossil fuels, these sorts of green energies and biofuels. We like to do research on making new biodegradable plastics and new processes of developing things like pharmaceuticals or food processing that are greener. We also like to restore damaged ecosystems, manage our stormwater so that we do not degrade our environment anymore. What we like to say is that biosystems prevents the cleanup of the environment. Environmental engineers are essentially devoted to the cleanup. We are the prevention.
Yeah. So usually we would be giving this presentation from the 4th floor bracket hall. That's our home as a department. I like to point out that all of our classes and labs are taught by faculty members. We have TAs for a lot of classes, but always the faculty members in there ready to answer a question. That's a big help in the learning process. We're a small department. This figure of 80 undergrads is really an overestimate. Right now, the department's sitting at about 60 undergraduates, sophomore to senior level. I say it every week, but the camaraderie between us just gets closer, and that's such a huge help and advantage that we have in our major. Definitely a marketing thing for us, and it really helps us through our journey.
Mm-hmm. That small size really helps you get close with your professors because in a lot of other engineering disciplines that are much bigger, usually a lot of the work you do is with teaching assistants and the professor is far away and hard to reach, but ours are most certainly not. Juliana was on a phone call with one of our professors earlier today asking a question about a test we have tomorrow. So we really do get to use that to our advantage.
Absolutely, and that's now more than ever such a good thing to have.
Yes, engineering was hard enough before it all became online, so we do appreciate it. So now we can get into our curriculum, and it's a pretty unique and balanced for an engineer, I would say. We do have those core engineering sciences that you get with your civil engineering classes, your mechanical engineering classes, and the like. These are things like statics and dynamics and fluid mechanics, the things that are physics-based. But we mix that with a really good portion of biology and chemistry and ecology. And those are the classes personally that I think make it a really fun major, because it's not just all math. You have some environmental things in there, some biological things in there. And when we combine the two, we get our biosystems core courses, which are things like watershed hydrology, looking at managing storm, things like bioprocessing design, where we look at how we can integrate chemistry and design to make the products we want, and so forth. And this is very helpful to our students. Because of our well-balanced curriculum, everybody who takes the Fundamental of Engineers exam, the FE exam there, passes. And that's very important if you want to become a professional engineer down the line.
Yeah, the flexibility of our curriculum is what sold me on this major. I can leave here and go build a bridge. I can deal with wastewater or stormwater. The options are endless, and that's something I'm really proud of in our major. So this is a glimpse into our life and our coursework. There on the left, a girl is working with a total station in a geomatics lab. Evan and I took this class in the fall. And the day that we had this exact lab, I think it was a busy week. We were really frustrated. And what we were doing seemed so meaningless. But then we looked over where the softball field was being finished up, and someone came to mark the bases off with the total station. And that was definitely an application that we were not expecting. And it was cool to see that in real life. The middle picture is a COD test, chemical oxygen demand. And this tests whether there are microorganisms in the water. So in some cases, that can be a good thing to have those microorganisms there, but in other cases, like wastewater, that's not what you want. That was in our biological kinetics class. On the right is a picture of my favorite lab that I've ever had. This is using a plug flow reactor to filter out pollutants in, that reactor represents like a stream or a lake, and coffee was our pollutant in that case. But using just gravity and natural water flow and time, we were able to filter out those pollutants relatively quickly. So you can see that we have an emphasis on hands-on learning. We have lots of labs, whether those be inside, outside, and we do a wide variety of things.
And this emphasis on design is present every year that you're in the major. Once you get out of your general engineering courses freshman year and you hop into your sophomore level classes, right away you're going to get a design project. This is done with some of the basics of biosystems engineering. For example, in previous years, people have made these microbial fuel cells, which are really cool because if you place aerobic and anaerobic bacteria a little ways apart from each other and give them nodes, they will create a voltage difference and make a little fuel cell. And something like that, of course, making energy bacteria has a lot of implications. Juliana and I's year worked with algae, and algae is really great. It's kind of like our little mascot of the major. You can do all sorts of amazing sustainable things with them. And we were looking at ways to filter algae out of the water and collect it, and also what to make with it, because you can make a lot of things like paper out of it, plastics out of it. We were working on that.
So heat transfer is another class that we take in our major. Evan and I are in this class right now. This class looks at the way heat and solar radiation interact with different materials. So whether that be a metal or even air and water. In this class, you learn COMSOL, a software that models the way heat moves through those materials. And this class, like every other biosystems class we have, culminates with a project. So these are examples of projects in the past. Our teacher yesterday showed us where she's using a student's old heat transfer project to warm a pool that she likes to swim in. So this class has been very interesting and super useful as we look at especially the seasons changing and the sun shining down more.
So lastly, you have your senior design project, which is your capstone. at the very end of everything you've learned, do this senior year, and you partner with some of your peers and end up working with someone in the industry, some company, to develop something useful for them or model something useful that they've done yourself. And this is an excellent way to prove what you've learned, not only to yourself and your professors, but to the people who's going to hire you in your careers as well. And this, as you might imagine, is quite the hefty project, but you get the entire semester to do it with the friends you've made in the major, and it's a really fun time.
So there are two emphasis areas that students can pick from in our major. The first is ecological engineering. This is what Evan and I both are. Its roots are in ecology. It's the macro scale of things. So protecting ecosystem, managing stormwater, even some wastewater in there. Again, using low impact design and stream restoration and working with watersheds and ecosystems is all encompassed in this emphasis area. The other side of things, the micro scale, is bioprocessing. So you work with microbiology on that side of things to produce different things, whether that be a biomaterial, a biofuel, biochemicals, even foods and beverages, using bioreactors and adjusting the environment.
Yeah, and one great way to describe the different ways each of these emphasis work is by something called creative inquiry. And at Clemson, creative inquiries are an opportunity for undergraduates to do some research with their peers, with the professor, and they're usually pretty unique and pretty fun, and certainly a lot more laid back than what you would get as a graduate doing research. So I did this ecological engineering CI myself, and what it was called oyster reef restoration. And because ecological engineering is looking at ways to improve the environment and the ecology around us, we were looking at restoring these oyster reefs, which filter the water, prevent erosion, and so forth. And what we were doing was integrating our design with the biology. We wanted to create structures that allowed these oysters to attach and start growing and make their own little reef. So it was a fantastic example of how we're uniting the common structural and mechanical aspects of design of engineering with the biological to make something that's sustainable and good for the environment.
So another example of an ecological engineering project are these bioretention ponds. We see these all the time and rarely do we blink an eye at them, but it's an easy way for stores and shopping centers and even large companies to meet a code for an impervious area. So lots of times, or at least in South Carolina, none of the stormwater goes through a wastewater treatment process. All of that water is directly diverted to a river or a lake, and that can have negative impacts for the wildlife and the plants in that area. So these bioretention ponds function and are engineered to filter out the pollutants that that area is susceptible to. So for a parking lot, it would be oil and gas, but for an industrial center, it could be other more serious compounds. So like I said, everything is engineered in this pond, the soil and dirt and rock deep below the surface, even the concrete buffer and the plants. And this is an easy way to filter out those pollutants, making existing systems more sustainable.
And these things are a lot more important than most people probably realize. Since they're everywhere, there's an army of these retention ponds. They prevent these pollutants from getting in the water and causing nasty things like algal blooms and eutrophication, which ends up devastating the environment and the ecology of those streams and lakes, which is why designing these things is very important.
Yeah. So on the other side of things, like I foreshadowed, is bioprocess engineering. The gist of this and the easiest way to explain it is it's taking nutrients, microbes, um, different liquids, putting them in a bioreactor and adjusting that environment to produce a useful product. So whether that be an anoxic or anaerobic environment, something that is open to oxygen, an aerobic environment, we can adjust that to get different materials. So Clemson focuses a lot on biofuels. Lots of our faculty do research with that. And we have a mobile biodiesel plant that Evan will talk about in a minute. But the options are endless with that. Lots of students have gone on to grad programs making biopharmaceuticals, and of course, you can ferment food and beverage or make plastics.
Yeah, so here's another creative inquiry that a lot of us end up doing. I'm the guy in the orange in the top, and
Right
it
there.
was really fun where we got to make just a whole bunch of biodiesel. And this mobile biodiesel unit is pretty neat. It's a 40-gallon tank, and you get to have students make the biodiesel themselves using waste cooking oil from around campus. And Clemson Facilities ends up mixing this biodiesel with the regular diesel, sending it out into their fleet, which is a pretty cool way that Clemson is being sustainable right now, and that biosystems people get to be a part of it. And if you like chemistry, then this side of the major is probably for you. Uh, and like Juliana said, it's a pretty wide-ranging thing, a lot of really cool technology in this, and a lot of stuff that's really basic, like brewing beer. We've had students make their own breweries, which is pretty cool. And we were actually supposed to tour one this past week, but as you can imagine, we can't do that right now. But it's still a really neat thing.
This is definitely the more creative emphasis of our major. So different research facilities, places on campus and off campus. This is the Biosystems Research Complex on the east side of campus. Lots of the master's and PhD level research goes on there, and this usually has to do with biofuels. So whether that be traditional ethanol and biodiesel, or we have a professor pursuing hydrogen fuels with thermophilic bacteria. Clemson is the land-grant university in South Carolina, which means that there are various research stations across the state. The Baruch Institute in Georgetown has close ties to our major. A lot of the ecological engineering projects go on here. There's always something to do of interest to our major. So whether that be a stream restoration or there's an estuary nearby, since it is on the coast, I don't think a year goes by that a student doesn't get an internship here out of our major or goes to work here following graduation. We also have a full-scale aquaculture system down at the Calhoun Bottoms right off of campus. This facility changes with the research our faculty do. So years ago, this was a truly functioning like aquaponics center with fish and growing different fruits and vegetables on the top of it. Now we grow algae there. Algae, like Evan said, algae is our mascot. So we spent a lot of time down here sophomore year, both with the algae implementing our microbial fuel cells. There's a stream nearby that we did a lot of work in. So this is our place, especially as sophomores. Exxon ran a commercial in the fall. I haven't seen it lately, but it talked about their sustainable efforts with biofuels, and it just happened to be algae biofuels. And the commercial ended with these beautiful turbines turning the algae where they were growing it. And that's what we have here at Clemson, and that's the best illustration I can give to you. So Evan and I are both excited that that's the kind of thing that we're participating in as undergrads.
Yes, for sure. And now we can talk about opportunities that you can get with our degree. Like we said, it's a very sort of wide-ranging type of degree. So a lot of the jobs and even similar majors at other universities will go by different names. Some may call it ecological engineer or bioprocess engineer. You can also get sustainability engineer. In fact, there's a sustainability minor here at Clemson that a lot of us are getting because it ties in so well. Our range of starting salaries are competitive with other engineers. And an interesting thing about our major is that about a third of our students end up going to graduate school. And these are top schools throughout the country. Most stay in the Southeast, though, because this is a pretty good place for research into biosystems. And you even have that odd person who ends up going to medical school. It is a thing. And the biology background that we give you is actually pretty helpful for that. And here's just a brief list of the places that some of our students have gotten hired to. The ones in bold, many Clemson students have gotten hired to. You see we have our ecological emphasis. These are generally big civil engineering type companies with environmental or ecological divisions. This is where you get to use your AutoCAD and your stormwater management and the like. Then we have the bioprocessing ones, which are the pretty neat places like Alginol, which is a local company that makes algae-based biofuels, really up-and-coming things in pharmaceuticals and food processing and so forth. You can have people get involved with the government, like in the EPA, and yeah, it's a pretty neat thing. We actually have a professor that keeps a running list of all the places students have gotten hired to. And those students who end up getting hired there send out emails to her, and we actually get the opportunity to apply to those places ahead of the curve. Because once these places end up getting Clemson Biosystems people, they want more, which we love.
Yeah, Clemson is ranked #1 for career services. And I think Evan and I would both agree that that extends far beyond the career office. We experience that on a departmental level and within our major, which is a really nice edge to have.
And so lastly, we love to get involved. We have our own club, which is aligned with our professional society, the ASABE, which stands for the Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. This is a great opportunity for networking, not only with people in the major, but with other biosystems engineers throughout the Southeast. We actually have an event called Rally, where one host university in the Southeast hosts every single biosystems major in the Southeast to come and visit, and they talk about graduates, studies, and what biosystems is like there, and ways to get involved in the industry once we graduate, and it's a really great thing. We also have the Order of the Engineer and Tau Beta Pi, which are more general honors engineering types of things, which if you become an engineer, I highly recommend joining. And lastly, because we're a smaller major, we really get to know each other well and just love each other and love Clemson and what it's provided for us. So we just love getting involved.
Yeah, so that's our spiel. We're happy to take questions about the major or Clemson in general. And you can jot down our emails. These are two of our professors that'll be happy to take your questions too. But if you have any questions now, we'd love to answer.